If you have a true scary story you'd like to see featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. Hello. I wanted to share an event that happened to me and my friend back in 2014. I live in a part of the US where fireworks were banned. So, unless we want to go to our grandparents' property that was an hour away, the only thing we could really do was have a cookout and or go see a fireworks show. This particular year, my parents decided they wanted to have a smaller celebration at a somewhat local fireworks show. And by a smaller celebration, I guess they meant my mom and dad, my two twin older brothers, and a couple that were friends of my parents. My brothers were 18, so they hung out with each other a lot, and then my parents had each other and their friends. So me being 14, I was feeling a bit left out. After throwing some hints their way, they allowed me to invite a friend to join us, so I chose my best friend, Holly. And with us also being at that age, we always wanted to look our best, so before we left for the park, we did our hair and makeup and wore our cutest patriotic outfit we could. We were feeling pretty good about ourselves, and also kind of grown up, so we were pretty excited. However, when we arrived, I had to help my parents pull out the chairs and the food and drinks before anything. Shortly after, two more of my parents' friends showed up who had a kid close to my brother's age, so they started talking to them too. I was pretty annoyed at this because if Holly hadn't come, there would be even more people in our small gathering and no one for me to hang out with. I'm used to my parents doing that, but it was still annoying, at least at my age. So, when they started talking, I told my mom that Holly and I were going to walk around the park for a bit. She said it was fine, but to be back by a certain time so we could eat and watch the show. With that, we grabbed our purse and phones and walked off. Again, we were feeling on top of the world. Holly was just like me when it came to our hobbies and interests, so we thought we would walk over to the small water park nearby, maybe get our feet wet, take pictures, and just talk. We at least prepared to get wet since it was so hot, so we had our bathing suits on underneath. As we approached the water park, we spotted two boys hanging out at the skate park, which was pretty much in the same area. They looked younger, or at least close to our age. We both commented on them being there and continued to the water. We may have been a bit louder than normal with our screaming and laughing, partially trying to get their attention too. Not long after, we looked back and noticed they were walking over there, towards us, making comments. They sat by us and started talking to us. They asked who we were here with, why we were alone, pretty innocent things like that. We explained that we just wanted to escape my family for a while. They briefly talked about themselves, telling us their names, which I don't remember anymore, and told us that they were 16. We told them that we were 14, so they were pretty close to our age. After talking a while, they asked us if we wanted to go with them to hang out some more. We asked where, and they said it would still be in the park. It was just behind the parking lot. Holly and I looked at each other and thought since it was still going to be in the park, then we should be fine. However, I knew that it was getting close to the time my mom expected me back, and if I wasn't, I would probably get in trouble. I didn't want to be embarrassed in front of my friend and our potentially new friends, so I told them that I had to go back to my family first. They teased us in a friendly way, making fun of us for needing permission and having a curfew. I, of course, denied their claims and just clarified that it was more about letting them know that we were going to be out longer. I even told them that we were having a cookout and offered to bring them back something. I was 14. I didn't really know what to offer a cute boy that was interested in me, so I guess I thought a hot dog and soda would suffice. They declined, though, and said they would just wait there. So we waved them off and made our way back to my family. When we returned, I saw my brothers and the other guy in the field behind our car throwing a football, and there were 2 more new people there that I didn't even recognize. We were greeted by Mom, I was introduced to the new people, and then we were free to eat and do whatever we wanted. By the time we finished eating, the sun was setting and the sky was transforming into the dark blues. Everyone was starting to find their seats, so we thought it was a good opportunity to dip. I once again told my mom that we were going to walk around, and since it was getting dark, she told us not to go far. I know my mom. She was way too preoccupied with her friends there, and just said something to sound like a caring and in-control parent, but I knew it was BS. So, as we started talking and walking to the field, I gave a look to Holly, and we both laughed, knowing we were going back to the water park. We were both hopeful that the boys were still nearby, and were talking about who we thought was cuter and other normal 14-year-old girl banter. As we got closer, we saw that they were in fact still there, now sitting on one of the railings and smoking. Now, I've caught my brother smoking too, so I know what it looks and smells like. I wasn't interested in it, but I thought maybe we would look cooler hanging out with them. We greeted them, and they again confirmed that we wanted to chill with them elsewhere, and we agreed. We followed behind them, past the parking lot on the other side of the water park, and down the small embankment. One of the boys pulled out a phone, turned on their flashlight, and shined it down a large cement tunnel. I've seen these before on, construction sites, but I still don't know what they were for. I also didn't realize just how large they were until I was standing right next to one. They stood to the side and held out an arm, ushering us into the tunnel. We walked in it, and at first, it was pretty cool. Looking at Holly, I think we were both kind of nervous, but there was an opening on both sides, and it seemed like a nice place to get away. We all started talking about random stuff, and one of them asked us what school we went to. We told them the middle school, and they mentioned a high school that we hadn't heard of. They said it was in a different city though, so it made sense to us. They said we looked older, closer to their age though, and mentioned how they thought we were hot. Again, it was a nice feeling to me. I just had a guy confirm that he liked me, and neither of us had been in a relationship before. That's when one of them said they brought something and walked out of the tunnel. I saw them lean over behind the tunnel and came back in, wiping off a bottle. He said he took it from his house, so he knew it was good. We had never drank before, so it made me feel a bit nervous. He offered it to Holly first, and she declined, so when he offered it to me, I declined too. Again, they both started teasing us, saying we were scared or too perfect to try it. They both took swigs of it, but then turned it back to us. I guess I was bad about peer pressure because as their teasing and pressure continued, I caved in and grabbed the bottle from them, taking a big gulp. That was horrible. It tasted like what rubbing alcohol smelled like. It burned my tongue, throat, and nostrils as I swallowed. I handed it back to them, coughing, as they started laughing. I told them they should get something better because that tasted awful. I was trying to play it off, but I'm pretty sure I failed. I looked over at Holly and she laughed too, but I could tell she was feeling a bit awkward. I thought things were calming down when they asked us if we wanted to play a game. We just kind of smiled and said sure. One immediately suggested we play truth or dare, and the other one agreed. And then the one facing me said, "I'll go first. I dare you to take your shirt off," as he stared smiling directly at me. Not knowing how to react in this situation whatsoever, I just laughed. I told them I wasn't going to do that, and they started laughing at me, again, teasing me about it. They made comments about us being down there with them for a reason, and that they thought this was our intention. Holly and I both disagreed, saying we just thought we were going to hang out. Then the one in front of me stood up and got really close to my face. I could feel him breathing on me. He was that close. I was terrified at this point. They claimed to be 16, and it was entirely possible they were lying, especially now, seeing just how much bigger he was compared to me. I didn't know what to do. I felt if either of us tried to run, they would very clearly be able to catch us. We didn't even know they had the alcohol on them, so who knew what else they could have had? The guy in front of me started laughing, and as fear gripped my heart, I could only muster what I normally did when I was this terrified. I started crying and called out for my dad. Except I became quite a baby in those situations, and embarrassingly I exclaimed, "Dad!" This caused the guy standing in front of me to look out the tunnel quickly. That's when I realized that he probably thought I was yelling for him. I looked up to see his face, and he honestly looked concerned, so I decided to go with it. I just yelled out, "We're down here, Dad!" Holly quickly grabbed my arm and joined in on shouting for our dad. The boys made another bullying remark about us, telling us to run off before we got in trouble, and we didn't waste any time. We ran out of the tunnel and climbed back up to the parking lot, looking back once to see if they were behind us. They were not, but we couldn't see anything a few feet in front of us due to how dark it was. We hurriedly made our way back to my family, where they were all laughing and having a good time. We climbed in the back of my dad's SUV so we could calm down and catch our breaths. We were both deeply shaken by this, thinking about what could have possibly happened if I hadn't had my little outburst there. We both kind of mutually agreed to never let something like that happen again, but we weren't going to tell my parents either. I was terrified of those boys finding us, or possibly running into them in the future, but I was also worried about getting in trouble if I told them I drank alcohol. That's just where my mind went being 14. We ate a bit more, me trying to cover up a smell that I thought they might notice, and stayed very close to my family for the rest of the night. We never physically saw those boys again after that night, but I did recognize one of them somewhere. I was going through my brother's yearbook later that summer, and as I flipped through, I saw the face of the boy that was standing in front of me. It immediately brought back the memories, and I asked my brother if he knew him. To my surprise, he did. He said he used to be on their baseball team but was kicked off after getting into some trouble. I asked what he did, and he said he didn't know for sure, but the rumors were that he beat up his girlfriend at the time or something. Then he mentioned how he didn't like him because he thought he was weird or that something was off about him. He asked me why I asked about him, and I just told him he looked familiar and left it at that. I then went to my room and tried to recover from a panic attack alone. One of them was at least 18, and they claimed to be 16, most likely because we said we were 14. They were practically adults, and they were totally okay with doing what they did to us. I still have not told anyone to this day, and I know that was probably stupid, but I really didn't know who to tell and what, if anything, could be done. They didn't technically do anything to us, and it would have been us versus them. I told Holly about what I found, and she also agreed that she didn't want to tell anyone or talk about it, so we just hid it deep inside us, and now, I guess, I'm sharing with you. If anyone takes anything from this, let it be this. Always, always trust your gut. Especially young boys and girls that may have self-esteem and confidence issues, and an adult, young or old, should never want to party with a kid alone. I lived in a semi-smaller town back around 2014. It was one of those towns where everyone knew each other. We actually weren't allowed big fencing, but chain link was also a no-no. So most people either didn't have fencing, or you had to have one of those short brown or white fencing. We had one in our place, just to better separate our property line and plant other trees and shrubs without being told we were over our property lines. I bring this up just to show how open our yards were and the lack of privacy. It wasn't a bad thing though, because all the neighbors were pretty great, except your one nosy neighbor, but we just learned not to say much when they were around. Anyways, with this openness, people often had block parties or cookouts together, and they were a lot of fun. My wife and I were definitely the social type, so we typically attended them, and also seemed harder to avoid if we wanted to when she became pregnant. Everyone wanted to ask how she was doing, what our plans were for X, Y, and Z, and so on. After our daughter was born, it was just as fun, as the other kids grew up with her and they all became friends. But alas, every seemingly normal neighborhood has to have a dark side, right? There was a younger lady that lived nearby. She lived at the end of the block. I'll call her May. May inherited her house from her parents as her father had passed and her mother had moved into an assisted living type of deal. They didn't want to sell the house, so they gave it to her, as long as she kept up on any maintenance it needed. I knew this based on what she told my wife and when I was volunteered to help fix or look at something for her place. So, of course, May also showed up to the parties and was typically pleasant to be around. She could get kind of loud, but we never really found an issue with it. Some of the older folks and families with like 4 or 5 kids didn't care for her, or at least how she handled herself, but I just steered clear of her while my wife just thought she was trying to live her best years. Regardless, no one ever really had problems with her beyond those situations. One of the bigger block parties we had was for the 4th of July, of course. It was typically a bring your own fireworks and food, but there were a few cheap grills laid out for people to use, and they blocked off part of the road and had standing solar lights sectioning off part of it so that kids could safely light off fireworks. This year, my daughter was about 6 or 7, so she was just getting into really trying out anything, so we spent a lot of time close to her, of course, helping her light the little fountains and then running off with her. We tried to set in the idea that you don't have to be afraid of them because she didn't like the ones with loud noises, but you also have to be careful and safe. So when May showed up, she came over, said hi, gave our daughter a box of Poppets, and went off to greet everyone else. She had brought a bag of candy and small fireworks and was giving them out to the kids. As it started getting darker, one of her friends showed up and that's when the party really started for them. They started getting a bit louder and really enjoying themselves, which was making some people avoid them. My wife was still welcoming to them, but we were still watching our daughter, so after offering them the chairs we brought, since we also had a blanket to sit on, they accepted the invite, but said they would be back because May had to use the restroom. We were sitting almost across the street from our place, so my wife offered them to let them use ours, but they insisted they would go back to hers, and off they went. We continued watching the show and taking turns with our daughter when her friend came walking back, asking if we'd seen May. We told her no, not since she had left with her, and she said that she was gone when she got out of the bathroom. She said she thought she had walked here by herself instead of waiting, but was surprised to not see her sitting with us. So she walked back to her place after joking about getting lost in her own house and left. A short while later, she came back again saying she still couldn't find her. We still hadn't seen her around since they left, and no one else at the party did either. Everyone was doing their own thing though, so no one stopped to help look for her or try to figure out where she went. I remember when we were packing up to leave, the party was still occurring, but our kid was getting tired and cranky, so we decided to leave. At that point, we had forgotten about the whole May thing until a few days later. We were at home and we had a cop knocking on our door. They said they were asking about May as she went missing the night of the 4th under suspicious circumstances. She visited her mom almost daily, and she just stopped showing up with no warning, and her purse was found in a ditch and all important belongings were left at home, like her keys and phone. We still hadn't seen her after they headed home that night, and never since, so we unfortunately weren't much of help. It was on the local news, but months passed and life just went on as she was never found and never returned. It wasn't until a little over a year later that our little town would finally get answers. On my way to work, I saw several cop cars at one of the houses on the same street we lived on. I learned when I got home that the guy that lived there had tried ending his life by sitting in his car that was in the enclosed garage. But authorities were able to get there in time to stop him because of the phone call he had made to 911 with a confession. He said he was going to take his life as he couldn't live with the guilt of killing May a year earlier. It took a while for us to finally get all the information, but gossip moved fast in that neighborhood too. This guy was driving intoxicated and was trying to turn down our block potentially. May was probably already outside, ready to head back, and was in the road for whatever reason, we don't know, and this guy hit her. We, unfortunately, were towards the other end of the street, and if there was any noise, it was most likely drowned out by the fireworks. The guy then picked her up, took her back to his place, trying to figure out what to do with her, where she passed from her injuries. I believe the report said she had internal bleeding. He then buried her in his unfinished basement as part of the floor was just dirt and sand. Within that time of him bringing her home, her friend was just inside and came out looking for her everywhere. If she had stayed inside or her friend had come out just a bit sooner, this could have been avoided. Hell, if we would have insisted she use our restroom, it could have been avoided. And that really tore at my wife for a while. So we found out what happened to her, which was heartbreaking. But we also knew this guy as he was part of the community as well. He also attended the parties we had, and sickeningly, attended a get-together we had at our place. This guy continued to parade around with the rest of us and knew something we didn't. We talked about her on occasions with him right there. It must have done a number on him, though, as it was quoted on the news that he couldn't live with the guilt and wanted her family to have closure. There were so many emotions surrounding those 2 years as the neighborhood seemed to crumble a bit afterwards. Some moved out, including ourselves, because it was just a weird feeling, but the thought we had a killer so close to us on a regular basis was pretty terrifying. You just truly never know a person, right? My husband Kent and I took a trip out of state one year for our Independence Day celebration. We decided on a road trip to the West Coast to a national park that we've both been wanting to go to for years. We were both very outdoorsy, but also very amateur too. We were not professionals by any means, but we loved being out there with nature, seeking the serenity of it, and not to mention the allure of an adventure into a new place. So, with our bags packed and excitement in our hearts, we set off to enjoy each other's company and immerse ourselves in the breathtaking beauty of steep cliffs and trees taller than we could even fathom. The drive itself went fine. We took all our precautions and car maintenance before we left, so no issues there. We got to the park on a Sunday, which was the weekend before the 4th. It was during the week, so we wanted to go before then, knowing it was probably going to be insane or maybe even closed. We had our bags with us, with some pretty normal hiking equipment, and we even had a small insulated bag with some cheap hot dogs and a few other small food items. We were wanting to find a good spot to maybe have a small barbecue or fire to ourselves. After about an hour of walking and sightseeing, we came across a beautiful fenced area that looked like it may have been an old campground. I say old because there was a bordered off place where you would see tents and a grill, but it looked really run down, like it was abandoned. However, with that in mind, and the breathtaking view, Kent said we probably wouldn't be bothered this far up, so we decided to call dibs. We sat under a nearby tree in the shade for a while, resting and just enjoying each other's company. That was until our stomachs started to talk too. We started pulling out our food and blanket when we realized we didn't bring any type of utensils. Our condiments were all in packages, and we didn't bring anything like potato salad, of course, so bringing something to grab the hot dogs from the grill didn't even cross our mind. So, Kent set out to find some good sticks that we could use instead, making our meal even more authentic and camping style, I suppose. I stayed behind, getting our stuff ready and trying to prepare the fire. As I busied myself with prepping our small food bar, I listened to the sounds of the birds chirping, the squirrels scurrying around the trees, and his footsteps slowly fading out. However, that's when our seemingly perfect day darkened. While Kent went searching for our utensils, I heard what sounded like a soft thud. I didn't think anything of it at first, just assuming it was maybe nearby rocks falling, or even my husband dropping something, knocking something over, or even breaking off a branch. No big deal. But when I called out to him asking a question, and did not even get as much as him asking to repeat myself, I became a little concerned. I doubted he would have gone somewhere far enough to not be able to hear me without telling me. So I dropped what I was doing and again called out for him and got no response. I started walking back by the trees when my heart dropped. I saw him laying nearly face down in the ground. I ran up to him, turning him around when he started groaning. I was nearing a panic attack, not knowing what to do. We were way up here on a mountain, pretty much alone. How was I supposed to get him help by myself? I was maybe 160 pounds at the time, and I couldn't even pick him up. I softly tapped his face and grabbed his hand, trying to get him to wake up, fearing to shake him too hard in case he hurt his spine or neck. Thankfully, he finally came to, but he was still groaning in pain. I tried asking him a million questions at once. What happened? What hurts? Are you okay? He just said his ankle seemed to give out and fell to the ground, hitting his head on something. He also said his ankle was now in excruciating pain, so I pulled up his pant leg to see a huge purple and swollen ankle. If he didn't break it, it was definitely fractured or dislocated or something. After confirming he was feeling all right otherwise, other than a headache and that he had feeling in his legs, I helped him up. He used me to lean on, and I brought him back to our blanket where I had him sit back down. That's when I noticed the blood on his head. A first aid kit was something we packed, but it too was pretty basic. So I pulled out an antiseptic wipe to clean his head and tried my best to bandage it with the gauze we had. Then I gave him a small one-time use ice pack to put on his ankle. While I thought I had the situation somewhat under control, my mind finally started to process the gravity of the situation we were in. We needed help, and I was going to have to be the one to get that help. The cell signal was shoddy at best. This was in the early 2000s, so we had some pretty crappy flip phones. Kent realized this too and said I needed to go back down to let someone know. But to be honest, I was worried about leaving my husband alone. If he hit his head hard enough to get knocked out, I was worried he might have a concussion or something else might happen while I was gone. He did his best to assure me he would be fine, but ultimately, I know that I didn't have a choice. I had to go. I gave him a hug and kiss, wiped my face, and told him I would be back as soon as possible. I quickly walked down the path we used to get there and tried to stay calm, but the tears wouldn't stop. I was so afraid. I was afraid of leaving him there alone. I was afraid of the idea of us being in an unfamiliar place, far from the comforts of conveniences of home, not to mention a car and a hospital. I sprinted down the path, hoping to not fall myself. Every rustle of leaves and every snap of a twig sent my imagination into a frenzy. I couldn't help but envision every nightmarish possibility. Each step I took felt heavier and heavier, knowing that it was to help my husband. After what felt like an eternity, a glimmer of hope emerged from the dense foliage. I spotted a family setting up a tent. I began crying at the sight of other people and immediately approached the adults and explained what happened. The woman started pointing me in the direction of a ranger cabin nearby, and they asked me if I needed any help. I didn't know what else they could do, but the man agreed to go back up so he wasn't alone. I felt bad not wanting the woman to be by herself, but she at least had the 2 kids with her. I continued down the path to, thankfully, find the nearby ranger cabin that was on the path opposite of the way we went. Someone was there, allowing me to explain what happened, and they quickly grabbed some things and called in for an ambulance. Thankfully, they had a small golf cart-like vehicle, and we were able to get back much faster. I was so relieved when we got back to see him still fully conscious and aware of what was going on, but his ankle definitely wasn't looking any better. The man with the family and the ranger helped get him into the passenger seat of the cart, and I quickly scrambled to pick up our stuff. My thoughtful husband was still trying to pick up stuff while we waited. The ranger allowed me to hold onto the back of the cart, where there was basically just a small cubby place to put items, just so I could get down to the entrance with them. By the time we got down there, the ambulance was already waiting to whisk us away. I drove our car behind the ambulance, and in that moment, I marveled at the sheer power of human compassion of these complete strangers who were willing to stop and help us in our time of need. When we arrived at the hospital, they did x-rays and determined that he did dislocate his ankle, so they were able to fix it without surgery at least. They also did a scan since the fall did knock him out to make sure he didn't have a concussion or worse, internal bleeding, and again, he was fine. Thank God I didn't think about that possibility at the moment of the event. Once he was in a room, I had a pizza delivered to the hospital, and we just celebrated our night there. He felt bad for, in his words, ruining our trip, but I was more than happy just knowing he was okay. We stayed at a nice nearby hotel that had a pool that we swam in and still enjoyed our vacation. Thankfully, we both got home okay and had one hell of a story to share with friends and family. But for that moment, I was terrified, not knowing what to do in the situation. We are a lot more careful now when we go hiking and to places unknown to us, but we also are much better prepared for emergencies. Stay safe and stay hydrated, friends. So that, my friends, was a collection of cookout / 4th of July stories. Thought it would be fitting for the occasion, whether it's, a week late or not. Who cares? They're still there. And I thought the worst part about it was potentially losing a finger or something. These are much more terrifying. So there's that. So hopefully you guys, if you do celebrate the 4th, hopefully it wasn't as scary as that and a little more normal, I suppose. As normal as it can be. Yeah. Let me know what you did that for the celebration. Or if you don't, how was your weekend? Because I'd still like to know that. I wasn't expecting us to do much, but they were actually having a fireworks show at a park that's pretty close to us. In fact, it was close enough that we could just see it from our backyard. But we walked down to the corner. There's a small place down there, and actually a lot of people were down there just lighting a couple things off or just waiting for the show, which was pretty neat. So it wasn't too hot out, and we got to just walk down there and watch it, which was really nice for our first holiday in Minnesota. So yeah, I was pretty happy with it. So if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, always consider subscribing. And lastly, don't forget to leave a comment on your thoughts. Or as I said, let me know how yours went. How did your weekend go? How's your week going? Let me know. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week and a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, take care.